first to 11 here. And yeah, good luck to both. All right. So we have Kasane and Teto misdropping their TKI directly off the bat, whereas COLDLESS is going for a 7-2 stack right now. COLDLESS is the first one to get back to back here, and they're continuing to go through it, transferring that well very nicely as Kasane Teto is having to skim a little bit. COLDLESS breaks that spike and sends it. Okay. Kasane Teto now has back-to-back. They have back-to-back 4. I'm wondering if they're going to cheese. Okay, COLDLESS with the spike right there. That's going to send a lot of cheese. Look at the bottom of that board. That is not pretty. That is not something you want to deal with. So Cold is getting a lot of garbage sent to them, but that's going to be slowed down by the cheese that they sent earlier. And oh my gosh, that is horrible. That is like 8 layers of cheese, while Cold's board is looking a lot more pristine. Little bit of cheese there, but Kasane is still working through this and are just now accessing this this nice large well. Both players kind of on the down stack right now. Now they're really building back-to-back. Kasane Teto with the 23 spike is going to be enough to find them that first round. All right, PCO from both sides. Looks like COLDLESS was actually trying to find the PC solve there, but not really finding it. I've seen a lot of players using PCO not as a way to find a PC, but rather just to start like a 5-4 stack. And I feel like that's something that Kasane was trying to go for right there. All right, so COLDLESS with a nice double quad into a down stack right there. Ooh, misdropping that S piece at the top sealed it right there, and that is going to be Cold's first point. All right. PCO versus a stick spin opener. And yeah, there's going to be the SDPC spin. And Kasane Teto with an immediate 22 down stack. Definitely just caught Cold off guard there, and that's enough to get them a second point. Yeah, you got to be ready for that, especially if you're doing an opener that is, you know, has a C-spin in the middle of it or deals a lot of damage. You got to be ready for the garbage on the other side of that being sent back to you. COLDLESS still sticking with that SDPC spin, finds a nice well underneath that. That's going to allow 28 spike there, but that's not really going to phase Kasane right here, although they do have that -9 at the top of the screen. This is some pretty nice garbage to work with here, so guessing they're not sweating too much. Okay, that was a little bit of a scary spike, but they were able to get through it, and yeah, just not quite able to handle the follow-up there from Cold, and we are all tied up. MS2 from COLDLESS side and Kasane with the 5-4 up stack off of the PCO setup. So Cold is going to send that pretty large spike. Both players are going to have back-to-back here. Kasane definitely plonking a little bit more, going a lot slower here than Cold. Or just, I just looked at the PVS. It felt like they were going slower, but overall, yeah, there we go. There we go. All right. 26 spike from COLDLESS is going to put a lot of pressure on Kasane's board, and they're going to have to downstack this here. They're alive, but that was a close one there for them. Cold does have a large well to get down through here. Let's see how they're going to use it. That is going to push Kasane up at the top of the board, and they do misdrop what appears to be an L piece and was not able to find their well in time. All right, TKIs on both sides here. COLDLESS with a misdrop that's going to force them to break their back-to-back right there, but they're definitely going to be looking to build it back up here. All right, Kasane also breaks back-to-back here. They have a pretty clean board here, a nice opportunity for downstack, and they are plonking a bit here. COLDLESS breaks that back-to-back immediately. And Kasane is skimming a lot there, so they're also not going to be building back-to-back. COLDLESS is the only one with back-to-back here, and they are just trying to spam out those T-spins here. And there's that 9 on Kasane's board, and so they're going to try to maintain well access right here. They're not too nervous. I mean, being at the bottom of the board is, you know, a pretty ideal place to be when you do see that indicator up at the top of your board, but you do need well access. They didn't have it for a bit, but they have it now at just the right time. So Kasane is going to get out of that pretty unscathed, and they are actually going to put a bit of pressure onto Cold and push them up to the top of the board, but for now they're fine. Getting some all spins on the way down. Kasane breaks back-to-back. COLDLESS has back-to-back, and Cold is going to be able to keep it for at least a little while here before sending it. These are some pretty clean wells for now on these players' boards, though there is a little self-imposed cheese. Okay, that cheese is gone, and I'm pretty sure that was a misdrop eyepiece on Cold's board. Didn't quite see exactly what happened up at the top there, but we are tied again. All right, so PCO stacking from both sides. Now they're really looking for a PC. Cold is bringing it into a 3-6 and Kasane bringing it into a 5-4. I feel like the 5-4 continuation is the most common one. All right, so there was a misdrop, I believe, on Kasane's board, but they were able to turn it into an all-spin. They break Surge right there and have a nice well to get into. Cold has a little bit of cheese on the board, turns it into a really nice T-spin triple setup, slowing down a little bit here to find these all-spins and finding that back-to-back. Both players with about the same back-to-back here. They break it at the same time here, and Cold is going to be pushed up at the top of the board with a lot of cheese going on underneath it. And even with that clutch clear, yeah, that was not a good place to be, especially with the STSC on the other side just waiting to seal their fate. Identical TKIs pretty much from both sides. Both players just following it up with a lot of T-spins here. Okay, some all spinning. Cold breaks back-to-back here, so that is going to leave Kasane with the advantage. We do see that -10 pop up, and Kasane is just going to be trying to continually output damage here, and is forced to break back-to-back there as Cold is able to pressure them. They gotta use that built-up attack defensively, and Cold sends a spike that puts Kasane at the top of the board. They have to rush into their pieces right here to find what they need to downstack, and even though they do, they're setting up a C-spin right now that puts a hole in their board, but Cold has a lot of attack ready. Okay, the Surge has been used. There is a downstack there for Cold. And Kasane is the one with the back-to-back right now. Ooh, that's a lot of cheese on Cold's board. That's a lot of 2 sections right there, and they are going to have to work through that. No back-to-back to be had there. Whereas Kasane is about to get that 4 back-to-back point and breaks it immediately to send that cheese. Yeah, that's a lot on a Cold's board right now. That's not easy to get through. They do find the well, though. Getting through that well is their saving grace right there, and they're able to continue this down stack and get into the clean portion of the board right now, and that's exactly what they needed there. Kasane just spamming out some T-spins, all spins along the way. Down at the bottom of the board here. Cold finds back-to-back and breaks it immediately. With a nice little 12 spike right here. Both players have their back-to-back right now at a pretty similar spot. The Kasane's is higher, and COLDLESS with a nice fix there, having some all spins into this down stack, breaks back-to-back. Both players break at the same time, and those surges pretty much cancel each other out. But COLDLESS has a nice well here, and they're going to try to use it for an attack. That's some really nice out-of-order stacking there. But there's that back-to-back, there's that well used up, and then there's a nice well on Kasane's board that they use, and then there's a misdrop from COLDLESS that is going to end that over 2-minute round. You don't see those very often, but I'm sure we'll see a few of them today. Ooh, so that's a misdrop on COLDLESS's board. They misdropped their SDPC spin. That's what you get for SDPC spinning. I don't like that opener, but it's fine. And that is the round. 6-3. 3 or maybe even 4 straight points. I just remember it being 3-3 at one point, but Kasane being able to run away with this a little bit. That is a very nice well for COLDLESS right there. That is exactly what you want when you're up stacking like that, but they do send it. Kasane does get into the well. They have a TST set up, and yeah, no, not finding the clear right there because of the J hang right there, and that is going to be another point for Cold, keeping themselves in this. All right, so stick spinning versus PCO, and they do actually take the PC there, finding a second PC, but yeah, it's not really doing much here. Oh, the 29 spike is the follow-up? Hello? All right, and COLDLESS is able to survive barely, and they do start on this down stack here as Kasane just builds up that back-to-back, sends it. COLDLESS with a 19 spike is going to stop all attack coming from the other side. And yeah, this is Kasane up the top of the board. Kind of nice garbage to work with, but not too much. And I spin on the way down as Cold is just pressuring and finds enough to win that point, bringing it almost back to tied again. TKI versus SDPC spin again. Yeah, and just finding that back-to-back out of the opener phase. Kasane not keeping their back-to-back. Okay, and Cold breaks while Kasane as well is covered, but they do find the sequence to get into it. And a nice little combo down stack from Kasane is going to put a lot of cheese onto Cold's board. However, there was a bit of cheese on their board to begin with, so it's definitely just a little bit of back and forth with this messy garbage. And Cold defending this spike sent from Kasane, and neither player really... Okay, that's a TST tower. All right. 20 spike out of the TST tower doesn't really do much to COLDLESS over here, who is up stacking. They do have to start down stacking a little bit earlier than they wanted here. Little bit of hesitation, finding the eyepiece in time to stay alive here, and Cold just got a spike. Well is covered. All right, down stacking through it. Kasane just trying to kill here, but COLDLESS staying alive, getting the pieces that they need to continue this here, finding back-to-back, breaking it, putting a little bit of cheese on Kasane's board, and even though they're able to cancel most of it, some of it still finds its way to the bottom, and so they are going to have to work through that there, and that is going to come back in the form of cheese onto COLDLESS's board. Setting up an S-spin triple right there for the style points. Both players kind of like it's kind of at a standstill right now. Kasane definitely slowing down a little bit, speeding up in response to that back-to-back break, that surge damage coming in. Yeah, both players about to have that 4 back-to-back, and then COLDLESS sends that, and then Kasane sends that, and it's going to end up with a little bit more cheese on Kasane's board, and that is going to be completely cleared already. So Cold is sending some back-to-back. It's when you send the all-spin minis, a lot of the times that will cheese up your opponent's board, which is why you'll see players going for that over T-spins. So whenever I see a player avoiding T-spins for all-spin doubles or triples, I think that, you know, usually that is a garbage thing. Ooh, and a misdrop there from Kasane on what was supposed to be an S-spin. COLDLESS setting up an STSD right now, being able to find 1.5 of those T-spins. Little bit of cheese onto Cold's board. They're going to down stack through it right now, and having a pretty nice spike from the bottom of the board, and we can see this gravity margin starting to ramp up as we are about to hit that 3-minute mark on the round. So that is when our garbage margin is going to come into play. So attacks will be slightly amplified, and the amount that they're amplified by will go up over time. So that's a really nice spike from COLDLESS there. Kasane forced to break back-to-back here. They're in a less than ideal spot at the top of their board, and that 29 spike from COLDLESS right there is going to tie it up. All right, Cold breaks back-to-back there as Kasane is the one to continue building it up, and there's that -7 on the board. COLDLESS trying to keep well access open here so that they can deal with the incoming garbage, and it does slow down COLDLESS enough for Kasane's after attack to find the kill. All right, TKIs from both sides right here, going to continue with the T-spins on COLDLESS's side, while Kasane Teto finds some all-spins first. Both players with some all-spins to try to continue their back-to-backage here. Building back-to-back at a pretty similar rate here. A nice spike from Kasane and Teto is going to force COLDLESS to break their back-to-back, but yeah, forcing your opponent to break back-to-back without dropping your back-to-back can put you in such a good spot, and that's exactly what happened there. All right, so we have a misdrop on one side, I'm guessing, just based on how much they slowed down, but COLDLESS, on the other hand, building up a 5-4 stack. Asana getting that lucky garbage that fits the well that they already had going on. So they're going to stack into that for a bit. Some nice all spins to find a 28 spike. COLDLESS is going to be forced to break back-to-back and go through this down stack. That is some misdropping on Kasane's board, and that gives COLDLESS the point. All right. Finding the PC out of PCO and then a 2-line PC to follow it up, but no more PCs as Cold is going to send the garbage over. Ooh, an 18 spike from Kasane right there. COLDLESS defends it before breaking back-to-back and finding a combo down stack now. Not too much cheese out of that one, but going to continue on the down stack there as Kasane has a misdrop with this S piece right here. And even if they fix this misdrop here, that is a ridiculously cheesy board for them to have to deal with. If Cold is able to spam out this attack right now, maybe even find some back-to-back, this should be their round. All right, so they have their back-to-back as Kasane no longer has that cheese on their board. They've gotten through all of it, and so this is, you know, let's see if COLDLESS can take advantage of the opening that they were able to create there with that combo down stack in the beginning. But it seems like, okay, here's this 13 back-to-back. So Kasane is going to try to ready themselves for this. And they do have access to the well, but not the pieces they need to continue. And we are tied up yet again. All right, more of the same openers. Ooh, and COLDLESS misdrops the C-spin right there, so not going to be able to find the full attack of that opener, but a really nice cleanup of the board into a 13 spike that just catches Kasane off guard right there, and that is going to be another point for COLDLESS. All right, PCO versus TKI. Ooh. Kasane misdropped that eyepiece right there, didn't quite slide it into where they wanted, and COLDLESS is building Secret Grade on their board for some reason, as they do have to try to downstack through the monster that they've created. Kasane misdrops their spin, and it's just a little messy from both sides here, maybe a little bit of fatigue from these long rounds coming out. All right, and COLDLESS with a nice cut copy to bring that back-to-back counter up. And so that is going to send to Kasane's board, but it is actually going to be kind of clean. They're not going to be able to keep back-to-back. Potentially, yeah, they are going to break right there, but these are still some pretty nice wells. Both players getting that back-to-back. Cold is the first one to break it into a 27 down stack, and Kasane is also going to break, and not too much is going to be formed out of that exchange, but Cold has 7 back-to-back again, and a lot of clean on the board. They're kind of building up a center 3-wide here, finding a bit of a combo down stack, and then they misdrop the T-piece, and ooh, yeah, that is it for the round, tying it up yet again. How many ties are we going to see? This is like the 5th one. Both players with the PCO 5-4 stack. Kasane taking a moment to think about their all spins right here. As Cold finds a 24 spike, that is going to send completely clean to Kasane's board. They have the well that they need to volley back that attack and continue on here as Cold finds another 17 spike, and Kasane has what they need to get down through this, but can they find the next well right here? The answer is yes, but Cold sends enough attack to finish out that point to be on match point here. TKIs on both sides. Cold getting through that garbage first, and then Kasane with some interesting all-spin setups there. Kasane setting up a TSD out of a TST setup as Cold is looking to get back-to-back here. They break their back-to-back. Kasane plonking a little bit right there, getting that back-to-back for some all spins to continue that, and then they break back-to-back, and Cold does have a response to that right now, and they are going to be on the down stack, a somewhat cheesy board. Kasane's cheese is so clean right now. They're going to get into that and find that back-to-back along the way, and I don't know if that was a misdrop or not, but regardless, Kasane is forced to break back-to-back, and that is going to go over to Cold's board, and that is going to be pretty clean. Cold gets through that for a small spike there, and look at that well on Kasane's board. They have the 2 eyepieces into it, and then the spin, and doesn't do too much to COLDLESS, who's just spamming out these all spins, and that is some messy garbage on a Cold's board right now. Definitely going to slow them down as they try to work through this, and Kasane misdrops what appeared to be an STSD over on their side. That is going to slow them down as well, so both players kind of finding a slowdown at a similar point in time. Cold is going to be stacking up a little bit on top of their garbage, but now stacking through it, and both players are at a kind of weirdly similar spot on their board right now. Yeah, someone's got to do something at this point, as we are getting close to that 2-minute mark. We may see another long round here. We just hear back-to-back noises from Cold's side, and ooh, all right. So both players forced to break right there, and that's going to leave Kasane's board slightly cheesier, but it is only a couple layers of cheese right there, so they will be able to get into that. And even some, ooh, the C-spin there from COLDLESS is very nice, but it doesn't really do too much attack right there. Cold does cover the well, so forced to, oh gosh, that misdrop. Yeah, that's it. That is game. Yeah, it's always interesting to see players going for the all spins there in order to cheese their opponent. But, yep, so you can